What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Whytbelt Podcast. My name is Fernandez, and today we have a bit of a different episode. As you can see, I'm sitting here with my guitar, and what I want to show you today is basically how to learn movement skills more efficiently. Now, why am I sitting here with a guitar? Well, it's interesting because the principles in learning music are exactly the same, and it's a really cool parallel to draw to break down how to learn movements where you got to put them in a sequence, whether that's dance, or choreography, whether that's a parkour line, whether that's a sequence in a tricking or acrobatics kind of flow, some soft acrobatics, ring routines. This method I'm going to show you today is going to help you not only understand and make those kind of transitions between your different moves much smoother and much more aesthetically pleasing, but it's also going to help you practice more efficiently and get better faster. A lot of big claims, I know, but you'll see why in a second. And this actually happened on the weekend. I was in the kitchen making some breakfast, and my housemate was learning a song on guitar. And he was practicing the kind of overall thing, but he was kind of getting stuck and not really making too much progress. And I kind of sat down with him, and he was like, "Oh, hey man, can you look at what I'm doing and see if you can see anything?" And when I kind of saw what he was doing, I was like, "Oh, this is exactly like movement." And the way that you kind of learn a song on guitar can be exactly the same as you learn a ring routine, any kind of sequence. So we're going to roll with the guitar for now and just imagine the analogy is explaining the movement, and I'll get to that in a second. So first of all, I want to show you guys what not to do when you're learning some kind of sequential thing. This can be applied across all different kinds of learning, and this kind of method can be thought about as chunking or identifying the weak links. So when my housemate was first trying to learn this song, he was kind of trying to do it like this. So figure out the first chord and be like, okay. No, this. No. And this is pretty typical of when people start to learn songs in general. It's exactly the same way that I started to start. I would take a piece of music that I wanted to learn, and I would try and just play my way through the entire thing, pausing when I needed to figure out a new chord, and just trying to get my way through the entire thing. Now, this is actually a great way to start, but as soon as you've done a pass through whatever it is, your routine, your piece of music, your tricking line, you then want to ditch that kind of overall approach immediately, because there's too much data in there for your brain to learn and to focus on at once. We have a limited what's called attentional space, which is where our conscious mind can only focus on so many different bits of data at once before it kind of gets overloaded and can't think about any more things. If you've ever tried to do some weird thing in movement, like swinging your arms both ways or trying to pat your head and rub your stomach or something like that, and you've never done it before, it can feel really like, oh, my brain's kind of exploding, because you're trying to focus on things that are almost outside your level of attentional space that you have available for learning in a single instance. Now, to get around this, what we want to start to do is break things down into different little smaller chunks and start to make those chunks, take those chunks from conscious focus to subconscious competence. That is basically the idea that will take you through to making your practice far more efficient and getting you to the point where anything that you're trying to learn in terms of these sequences is going to start to look like a polished picture much sooner. It's really cool. And here's how I would do it on the guitar. So let's just say that I've got this whole line that I'm trying to learn, and I'm kind of stumbling my way through each one of these. And I actually did this with my housemate, and he got the piece of music he was trying to learn in a fraction of the time after we started doing it this way. So first of all, what I would do is I would take the very first chunk, the very first link in the chain. Those are the first two chords. Once I kind of I've done a little pass of that first section, I know the general shapes, I can do the individual elements. Now I want to start to work on smoothing out the transition between the two of them so that I can start to put it together in something that sounds like music or that looks like some kind of combo in your movement. So I'll practice those first elements really slowly. Once you can do that, you start to speed it up a little. So you can get it a little bit faster. And it's something that's approaching full speed. You don't need to work on your absolute speed or perfection. You just want to get to the point where you can transition between the two without making these little stuttering things all the time. Once you can do that, you've already got your first chunk. You've already got your first link in the chain that you can start the sequence. And now you can start to focus on what's next. You got this little slide thing. Maybe this one's a little bit harder. You got to practice this. And you can do that over and over and over again. But when you go to start to put that into the rest of it, now you've already got the first link in your chain and you're going to add a second one. So now when I go to practice, cool. Now, I only got one successful attempt in this example here, right? But what did I get 3 or 4 more successful attempts at? That first thing that I just learned, that previously I had to focus all of my attention on figuring out, and now it's all starting to fit together. I'm able to get so many more successful reps because I've taken the time to make this first link in the chain very solid, get this looking like an actual piece, and then when I go to start to build on, when I start to work on that little second piece, now I've got another little link in the chain. I can start to put them together. Can already do this. Every single time you go back and play through the entire thing, you've already got your first piece down. This does not happen if you try and learn the whole thing at once. If you don't take the time to take what is that conscious attentional space and make that subconscious, then every single time you're gonna go pass through, you've got to figure it out consciously again. You guys get the idea. Practicing this way helps you get so much more successful volume. Successful volume is what essentially makes you improve. When you succeed at putting two things together, you're reinforcing those neural pathways, those connections, performing that task in a particular way that sounds good, that looks good, that's safe, that's effective, whatever technique you're practicing, right? Once you can get that first connection down and you start to stack on top of that, and brick by brick, you're building on this really solid technical foundation for you to then go and put together later. Now, this is the way that also things start to look like a cohesive song, a cohesive routine, far sooner than if you're kind of mucking your way through things and trying just to do everything at once. It takes much longer to do a whole rep, and there's too much complexity within that entire massive rep for you to get the little details right. And when it comes to movement, when it comes to music, all of those little details are what makes the difference between a kind of scrappy product and an overall polished looking thing, something that feels really cool to do, something that sounds good, something that looks good, all of the above. Now, when I was practicing this with my housemate and he was going back and dialing in those individual things, we soon found the little bits that were most problematic for him. And we spent time going over that super slowly and just keep on practicing loops and loops and loops and loops. And you can kind of get into this bit of a trance. It sounds a bit boring, but when you're doing it, you get into a bit of a flow state, you really start to feel it, and you start to feel that process of taking something from that conscious focus to the subconscious. of fun and soothing and to do. It kind of feels nice on your brain. And once you do this over and over all, your chunks start to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but those chunks are made up of unconscious competence of what you're doing. So if you were to take this and apply this to a movement skill, a soft acrobatics line, for example, you've got a back roll to a butterfly kick to a tornado kick to a cartwheel. And you're trying to do the whole thing and work on it over and over again. You kind of keep stumbling out of it in different ways. You can do exactly the same thing. Take the first two pieces, your back roll to butterfly kick, and start to practice the transition between those two. Start slowly and then build it up over time until that piece is feeling super, super, super comfortable. Then you can start to work on that third piece, into a tornado kick. So once you work on that transition, then you've got two successful transitions together. By the time you put those first three elements together, you're going to be absolutely flying through it and ready to do your final move. This is how you chunk things down, you work on those missing links, and you accelerate your progress far beyond what you would be able to do when you try and just bite off this giant thing that you don't know how to get at. There's too many little details for your mind to focus on properly, and it's hard to get enough significant volume for you to practice the skill effectively. I hope this has been interesting, guys. I hope this has been something fun for you to think about. And whether you play music or you're into different movement skills, I hope that you can start to implement this repetition, this chunking based repetition into making your skill, your practice sessions more fun, more flowy, and getting your final products much more nice looking.